You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
I've talked a lot on the show about what I've called the empathy gap, the inability of a lot of conservatives and Republicans to kick their moral imagination into gear. When your kid is gay and your kid wants to marry, or your kid's family is vulnerable because they're gay and can't marry, fuck you and your gay kid. When my gay kid comes out, I'm for gay marriage. When my husband has Alzheimer's disease and I'm Nancy Reagan, suddenly I'm for stem cell research. When it was your husband with a disease that might be cured via stem cell research, fuck you and your husband. When you get addicted to drugs, fuck you and you should go to jail. When I get addicted to drugs, I'm Rush Limbaugh. Suddenly I'm for treatment over incarceration because my ass got addicted to drugs. We talk about the empathy gap a lot, the failure of moral imagination on the part of so many conservatives and Republicans, that they can't see their shared humanity in others who are in different circumstances, whether we're talking about queer people, whether we're talking about immigrants, documented, undocumented, whether we're talking about the people suffering in Puerto Rico right now, the empathy gap, the failure of moral imagination. And I have railed against Republicans for that empathy gap, for that failure of moral imagination, for their failure, their inability, their seeming inability to see what they have in common with their fellow Americans, some of whom are very, very different. And in the interest of brutal honesty, I am guilty of that failure in moral imagination myself, it seems, today. I wept after the massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. I wept after the massacre at Sandy Hook because I'm gay. I was once that queer kid who only felt safe one place in the world, inside a gay bar surrounded by other gay people, the only place I truly felt safe and truly felt I could be myself. And all those queer kids, Latin queer kids, at that queer night, mowed down by a gunman in that one place where so many of them felt safe, and I wept. And after Sandy Hook, I wept because I am a parent, and I would drop my kid off at school. And every parent who drops their kid off anywhere, a park to play, play date, school, leaves them at home with a babysitter, you leave with a little twinge, a little sense of worry, a little sense of dread for the worst case scenario. I have worst case scenario disorder. I'm always turning worst case scenarios over in my head, and there is no worst case scenario for a parent than what happened at Sandy Hook. And I wept. And this morning, reading about the shooting, the massacre in Las Vegas last night, I am ashamed to say that my eyes were dry because I didn't, for a moment, for the first few moments, I didn't recognize my shared humanity. I experienced that empathy gap. This was a country music festival. These are, some part of my reptile brain said to me, dry eyes, these are not your people. And of course, they are my fucking people. They're my fellow Americans. They're my fellow human beings who are mowed down. And so I have to take responsibility right now. And I'm taking it right now for the failure, my failure, briefly, failure of my moral imagination to kick into gear, my failure to recognize instantly my shared humanity with these people who are mowed down in Las Vegas by this deranged gunman who had 10 rifles or more in his hotel. How do you get 10 rifles up into a hotel room? And picked them off from a balcony. 58 now known to be dead, 500 injured. I wept eventually. I'm ashamed to say I didn't weep immediately. And here we are. What do we do? What can we do? Beyond guns, which are absolutely necessary to address and dramatically restrict access to, Josh Marshall wrote this morning at Talking Points memo, we need to recognize that we don't have mass violence only because of guns. We have so many guns because America is a deeply violent society that goes back generations. We have recurrent massacres because we are awash in firearms, and also because we are a deeply violent society. Nothing so deeply rooted in our culture can be easily changed, but we could change it. We cannot and do not, because at the end of the day, we accept it. And sometimes we cannot and do not, because at the end of the day, all of us are susceptible to that failure of moral imagination, susceptible to failing to bridge that empathy gap. And I myself was susceptible to that impulse this morning, and I am, as I said, ashamed of myself. But what can we do? I don't know. At this point, on the left, with all sane Americans, is a kind of learned helplessness. What can we do? If we couldn't change the gun laws after Littleton, after Aurora, after Orlando, the odds that they're going to change after Vegas, I think, are vanishingly slim. Nothing is going to change until that blessed day comes when we finally pry Congress out of the cold, dead hands of the National Rifle Association. And I have a hard time when I peer out at the horizon seeing that day coming ever. And so there will be more massacres. We will have more mornings like this. I went to bed last night hearing that there was a shooting in Las Vegas, thought it would be, we've had 217 mass shootings in 2017 alone, thinking it would be one of those unremarkable mass shootings that would just be added to that total. Look at what it takes to break through. Look at what it takes to make the national news. There was another mass shooting yesterday where 7 people died. That didn't even make a blip. That didn't even register. It takes this. It takes mass violence and mass terror. And then what do we get? We get the thoughts and prayers brigades. From Donald J. Trump, we get flags at half-mast and praise for first responders, and praise, yes, deservedly so, for first responders. But maybe first responders would have less to respond to, and they would themselves have to put their own lives on the line less often if we had sane gun control. Like Josh Marshall said, we need to address and dramatically restrict access to guns to create a safer society. One of our founding fathers said, the tree of liberty sometimes needs to be watered with the blood of tyrants. We are told by conservatives and gun humpers that freedom means guns. I am sick to death of seeing the tree of liberty watered with people to go into the movies, little kids going to school, people who love country music gathering in Las Vegas, my fellow Americans who love country music gathering in Las Vegas to celebrate, to party together, to enjoy their passion for country music. I'm sick to death of seeing their blood poured all over the tree of liberty. What we've heard from conservative politicians in the past is, it's too soon. Don't politicize this tragedy. Well, let's have a discussion about gun control, but let's pretend we're talking about Littleton. Let's pretend we're talking about Aurora. Let's pretend we're talking about Pulse. Let's pretend we're talking about any of the other 217 mass shootings this year so far, and not this one. We can never begin to have the conversation about gun control because there is always another mass shooting that just happened or is just about to happen. So pick one from the last 10 years and let's talk about that one while we talk about gun control. Also, the conservative bromide, the conservative prescription. Remember after Pulse? Right-wing commentators, right-wing assholes all over Twitter were saying, if only those liberal queerbaits in that bar had been armed, if only that was a gay bar full of open carry advocates and practitioners, they could have pulled their guns out and fired blindly into the dark at where they thought maybe the shots might be coming from, take out the shooter and save the day. It's the right-wing FAP NRA hero fantasy that never seems to come true. What was the prescription for the victims, the 58 and the 500 in Las Vegas? Shots ringing out from a hotel balcony. I guess if there had been 300 or 400 people at the festival with high-powered rifles, they could have pulled their weapons out and began to fire blindly at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, guessing which room the gunfire was coming from. Oh, by the way, did you know the NRA, currently the only gun legislation before Congress, is a bill to allow for people to put silencers on their weapons and their rifles, to make silencers legal, which would have made locating the shooter even harder for those first responders Donald Trump praised yesterday? Yeah, I don't think that would have worked. What would work is what works in every other civilized, sane democracy in the world. Gun control, restrictive gun control. If you've been a long time listener to the show, you've heard me say this before. Gun owners who listen to my show. You live in a country where any idiot, any dangerous, violent fucking nutbag can get their hands on a gun. So when we hear someone has a gun, we don't think safe, responsible, trained patriot. We think potential lunatic who might kill me and my whole family. Don't you gun owners want to live in a world where the bar is set high for gun ownership, that if you own a gun, that really means something? That means you've had firearm training? That means you're the kind of person we want around in a crisis or an emergency? As opposed to the kind of person who is most likely to cause that crisis or cause that emergency? You would think gun owners, people who value guns most, would want to see the bar set high for gun ownership. That is not the case, because the NRA, which has bamboozled gun owners, doesn't work for gun owners. It doesn't work for Americans. It works for gun companies. It works for the merchants of death. Stocks for gun manufacturers jumped at the news of this massacre, because every time there's a massacre, more guns are sold. Anyway, I'm just spinning my wheels. Nothing is going to change. We didn't change anything after Littleton. We didn't change anything after Aurora. We didn't change anything after Orlando. Nothing is going to change after Las Vegas because of the power of the National Rifle Association and the Republican Party that it purchased and carries around in its pocket. One day we will pry Congress and the White House and governors and state legislators out of the cold, dead hands of the NRA. Till that day, more shootings, more massacres, more failures of moral imagination on both parts, on both sides, more dead Americans. Another fresh pile in Las Vegas. All right, coming up on today's show, lots of your relationship questions, lots of my relationship answers, and joining us on the Magnum edition of the Savage Lovecast, ad-free and twice as long. You can subscribe to it at savagelovecast.com. Erika Moen of Oh Joy Sex Toy, here to share a sex toy recommendation. This episode is brought to you by Blinkist. Over 2,000 of the best-selling nonfiction books transformed into powerful packs you can read or listen to in just 15 minutes. Go to Blinkist.com/savage to start your free trial today. Thanks to Audible for supporting the Savage Lovecast. For a free 30-day trial, go to audible.com/savage. Today's episode is brought to you by Stamps.com. Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service right to your fingertips. Buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail using your own computer and printer. And right now you can enjoy the Stamps service with a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in my code SAVAGE. That's Stamps.com, click the mic, enter SAVAGE.
Hey, Dan. I'm 27. I've been married to my husband for 2 years, and we dated for several years before marriage. I love him very much. He's my best friend. However, his job recently took him away during weekdays for a nearly 3-month period of time. During this time, I picked up a habit of ca.m.ming, and I quickly became very invested in it. I'm not sure when I consciously made the decision to do this. It just happened, and I fell deep into a rabbit hole of fantasy and fetish. Particularly, I became fascinated by light BDSM and playing a subordinate role. I've always been a sexual and flirtatious person, but I've always adhered to the view that my relationship with my husband is monogamous. This ca.m.ming habit allowed me to have the best of both worlds, a loyal relationship and also alternative sexual satisfaction. It was also an outlet for me and a means of self-expression. I had an entire alter ego built around it. It filled a void that I didn't even know existed. It gave me confidence and energy, made me feel amazing. It also breathed new life into my sex life with him. We explored kinks in new ways, and it was awesome. All the sexual energy and confidence that I gained from ca.m.ming spilled into our sex life, which was good before, but now it was better than ever. I didn't tell my husband that I was ca.m.ming because I knew he wouldn't be okay with it. I was, of course, caught, and I stopped at his request. Ever since, he has been struggling with his feelings about the situation, and so have I. He wavers between wanting to help me fill the void through creative sexual exploration with him alone to beating himself up over what he perceives as his own inability to satisfy me, to struggling with issues of trust and Googling my camgirl username. He's admitted that he has a problem with this and he has to overcome it. This whole situation has me feeling lost and trapped and somewhat ashamed. I miss my habit, and I know that I may never have that back. Even if he was okay with it, the fact that he's aware of it and maybe hyper involved with it, if it were ever allowed again, makes it unappealing. I choose him first. I empathize with his feelings. I don't want to hurt him, and I'm not sure that he can separate fantasy from reality in the same way that I can. We're both struggling in our own ways. The void that was filled by this habit is now even larger, and I don't really know where to go from here. So any advice that you can offer would be appreciated.
There's a lot going on here, but I really want to address something you said toward the end of your question. Him knowing that you're doing this, if you were to start doing it again, him knowing makes it unappealing. There's something about his consent. There's something about his buy-off and perhaps his participation around the edges or margins that ruins this for you. To me, that says that this persona and this kind of career, this little mini career, this sideline in camming, was as much about the kinks that you were able to explore in this kind of safe way at this remove, at this distance, and the adventure, as it is about the autonomy and wanting a zone of sexual expression that is yours alone, that isn't about your husband, where you get to be just you, not a pair, not half a couple, but you yourself alone, a persona that is separate and distinct from your persona as a married woman, as his wife, and him as your husband. And that was important to you, and you seized that. That's how that happened. You say, it just happened. How'd that happen? It happened because you did it. It happened because you needed it. It happened because you went and did it. And I'm a little annoyed, or I just want to draw your attention to early in the call when you kind of pin a little bit of the blame or responsibility for what you chose to do on him for taking this job that took him out of town for 3 months ago. And you sort of throw that out there as if that explains or justifies this choice that you made, which really wasn't about him going out of town. It really wasn't. I think you might have likely done this at some point. Maybe him going out of town created a kind of erotic vacuum that sucked this out of you, but this was coming. You needed this. You needed this autonomous zone of sexual self-expression and sexual self-creation. And you got it. And now it's gone. And I think that's the conversation you need to have with your husband. He says that he worries that he's not able to satisfy you totally. And the difficult conversation you have to have with him is that, yeah, that's true. Just as you aren't capable of satisfying him sexually in every respect. One person can't be all things to another person sexually. And a lot of time and effort is wasted, a lot of grief and conflict created in relationships when we have to pretend that that's the case. And when we police each other for evidence of what we should just accept to be true. That of course you have desires and fantasies that don't involve me. Even if we have a monogamous commitment that we both are endeavoring to honor and sustain, yeah, I'm attracted to other people. Yeah, I contain erotic multitudes, and there's parts of my sexual desires, or sexual self-expression, or part of my sexual interests, or my inner erotic life that don't involve you and couldn't involve you. You know, I know gay guys. I was talking to a gay guy this weekend whose boyfriend is roughly his age. They've been together forever. They're getting married. He also has fantasies about big burly daddies fucking the shit out of him. Well, his boyfriend that he loves very much, that he's in a monogamous relationship with and committing to and marrying, can't fulfill that part of his fantasy life, can't be that to him. And he masturbates about that sometime and watches some like gnarly, big burly daddy fucking boy porn to scratch that itch. And it makes his boyfriend feel a little insecure because he can never meet that need. And you know what? You can never meet that need. I literally said that to his boyfriend when we were talking in the street. You can never meet that need. And so you have to let that go. And you need to be insecure about it if you want to be insecure about it, but it's a waste of insecurity. There are better things to be insecure about in a long-term relationship and in everything else. Better focuses, better places to put that kind of anxiety than something we should just all, again, accept to be true. You can't meet all your partner's sexual needs, all your partner's sexual fantasies. That's the conversation you need to have with your husband. Can you create a zone in your life, in your marriage, where you can be this person to other people through your camming that you aren't with him and don't want to be with him and can't be with him because you have a different sexual connection, different erotic script with him that you enjoy very much. And in fact, he benefited from this other part of your erotic inner life finding an outlet. You guys were fucking more and having more adventurous sex as a consequence of the camming that you were doing. As a direct result of that fueling your desire and boosting your libido, he benefited. He didn't know why he was benefiting, and it wasn't fair of you, I think, in a long-term committed monogamous relationship to do this without giving him a heads up. I don't think one person has a veto power over another person's sexuality, but I do think in a committed monogamous relationship, in a marriage, that you have a right to be informed. You have a right to informed consent. And if your partner's going to do porn or cam or escort, that's not just about them anymore. That's also about you. You are involved, tangentially perhaps, but you are involved. And you have a right to be informed. Well, now that he knows, is this something that he can allow you to do, to explore these fantasies, to inhabit this persona online through camming with others at this safe remove, no physical contact? Or isn't it? And remind him of all the ways in which, when this was going on, he was benefiting. And you need to also, surprised I waited this long to get to this, you need to apologize to him. If he was doing something similar throughout your marriage or over the last year, would you be hurt? Would you be offended? If you found out his 3-month out-of-town job was gigolo, Even if he didn't touch anybody, if he was just an erotic dancer in a club somewhere for 3 months and he never thought to tell you that all these women were stuffing dollar bills in his panties while he was away, you might be miffed. And so you need to make a good faith and sincere apology to your husband for this shit you were doing in his absence that he kind of sort of had a right to know about. Just as if he was going away to be a Chippendales dancer for 3 months, you kind of sort of had a right to know about that. And then after you've made your apologies, after you've made amends, then you can have the conversation about whether you can do this going forward with his knowledge and consent, but it can be your thing alone. And ask him during that convo if there's some zone of erotic autonomy or sexual autonomy, some place that he wants to go as an individual, as a single man, not as somebody's husband. What can you do in 15 minutes? Waste time on Facebook or online shop for something you might not need? Instead, why not get a summary of a book's main points that you've been meaning to read by listening to the key insights in just 15 minutes? Introducing the Blinkist app, over 2,000 of the best-selling nonfiction books transformed into powerful packs you can read or listen to in just 15 minutes. Learn the essential ideas from the best books covering topics like sex and relationships, biography and history, and politics. Plus, you can uncover subjects you never knew you loved. With Blinkist, you can feast your mind on the key ideas from the top best-selling nonfiction books. Books like, American Savage by me and Girls and Sex by Peggy Orenstein. Have a quick listen, then you can decide if you want to buy the book and read the whole thing the old-fashioned way. Their team of experts is constantly curating and adding new titles from best-of lists, so you know you're always getting the most powerful ideas distilled so that you can hear them in just 15 minutes or less in a made-for-mobile format. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer for my listeners. Go to Blinkist.com/savage right now to start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan when you join today. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/savage to start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan. Blinkist.com/savage.
Hi, Dan, 20-year-old Bay Area listener here. My boyfriend and I just recently decided for our 2-year anniversary, we're going to be celebrating at a Bondage B&B, BB&B, and we're very excited, but they offer so much, we're worried we're not going to know where to start. I know we're going to start watching some BDSM porn together to get ideas, but there's so much out there. I'm wondering if you have any tips for us for how to plan a really kinky day.
If you rented a dungeon or a bondage bed and breakfast and there's tons of gear in there and you have zero experience doing bondage or BDSM with each other, you're going to have to take it easy. You're not going to be able to try out all of the gear. You probably won't even know what to do with half of the gear you're likely to encounter in a fully tricked out dungeon or B. So my advice to you would be to keep it simple, since neither of you know what you're doing. You're not going to want to do suspension. You're not going to want to hang each other from your ankles. You're not going to want to use the anal hook. If there's an anal hook in the room that some people can incorporate into bondage safely, but a novice who doesn't know what they're doing is unlikely to be able to incorporate an anal hook into the bondage play safely. And if there's tons of ropes, but also tons of gear, my advice is always to go for the gear. A lot of people who are novices and nervous about bondage want to keep it simple and safe, and they'll opt for handcuffs and rope, which are actually more dangerous than the sinister looking black leather restraints are, because the restraints that buckle distribute the pressure evenly, whereas ropes can cinch and cut off nerves, and handcuffs are terrible because they can twist and torque and hurt wrists and break bones. So you're going to want to stay away from handcuffs, if indeed they even have handcuffs for guests to use, and opt instead for the restraints. But I would encourage you to stick to good old-fashioned spread eagle bondage on the bondage bed that is likely to be available to you in any decent BB&B. So keep it simple, and you'll have a good experience, and then you'll probably want to go back. And as you gain more experience, you'll be able to use more and more of the gear. One last thing, a programming note for people who are curious about bondage and BDSM. It helps to play with experienced folks. Find the BDSM or kink organization in your community. Go to a munch. They are informal, sort of chit-chatty, brunchy potluck things where people aren't going to play. They're just going to talk about BDSM and kink. Go to a few play parties. Observe experienced kinksters playing. Approach people in those environments, big public play parties, munches, who have skills that you would like to acquire, who are good at the things that you want to do, that you've seen in porn, and ask them if they will mentor you, if they will literally show you the ropes or the restraints. And that's why a lot of them are there. And a lot of people in that community, particularly people who go to the brunches, go to the big play parties, want to share their skills and expertise with novices and newbies. And that is a much better way to acquire the skills than sitting in your apartment watching BDSM porn and then giving it a go yourself in a BB&B. Going to the post office can be such a drag. Lines are long. It's always out of the way. And if your post office where you live is anything like my post office where I live, it doesn't smell very good in there. Thankfully, you can avoid the hassle and stank of the post office and instead mail everything from postcards to envelopes to packages, domestic or international, with stamps.com. Stamps.com lets you buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail using your own computer and your own printer. Simply click, print, mail, and you are done. And unlike the post office, Stamps.com never closes and smells nice. Print postage for letters or packages at your convenience 24/7. Plus, they'll send you a digital scale that automatically calculates exact postage and help you decide the best class of mail based on your needs. You can even get discounts you cannot get at the post office. Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service right to your fingertips. And right now, you too can enjoy the Stamps.com service with a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale without long-term commitments. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Savage. That's Stamps.com, enter Savage. Stamps.com. Never, ever go to the post office again.
Hi, Dan and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. Long-time gay male listener here from Johannesburg, South Africa. I have a relationship dilemma I'm hoping you can help with. Most of my family lives in Australia, and of course the same-sex marriage plebiscite has been a hot topic. For the most part, I've been pleasantly surprised by the outpouring of support from family members, messaging me to say they're voting yes. And most of them have all agreed that putting human rights to a vote is a waste of tax dollars that could have gone to much better use. My issue is with a cousin of mine who, long story short, has made it clear that he is confused about the matter, but that he and his right-wing Christian wife are voting no. I tried to engage him on a Facebook post that he made about the issue, but got mostly abusive replies from his circle of friends. I then unfriended him and decided that I would just cut him out of my life. A few days later, I got an inbox message from his mum, a church-going Christian, apologizing on behalf of all Christians for the religious abuse that Christianity has bestowed on LGBT people over the years. She told me she is voting yes, and that she even volunteers at a Christian equal marriage organization. She also must have spoken to my cousin, because he then inboxed me to say that he is sorry if he hurt my feelings in any way, and that he agrees the issue is very polarizing. He said it's causing a rift in his church, and even though he and his wife feel a certain way on the issue, we should still be able to love each other as cousins. Well, I think his reply smacks of hypocrisy. I want to reply to him and politely tell him to take a hike. I'm happy to cut him and his wife out and not attend family gatherings when he and his wife might be present. But then again, I'm wondering if I should be handling this differently. Dan, help! How do I handle this reply?
Go ahead and unfollow your shitty cousin on social media. You don't need his asshole friends from his partially assholey church blowing up your Facebook feed with their nonsense and their bigotry. But I would encourage you to continue to attend family events with your cousin and his shitty wife present. Because what he's going to see is you and your husband. What he's going to see is other family members treating you two no differently than they treat every other married couple that's a part of the family. Every other person who's joined your family by marrying into it. They will treat your husband with that same respect, deference, allowance, and that will send a message to your cousin and his shitty wife that they are behind the times, that the family is not on their side, that on this issue they are wrong. They will also see that it takes nothing away from them for you two to be treated just by your family equally, for your relationship to be honored and respected as a marriage in the same way that everybody else's marriages are honored in your family as marriages. And that can help open his eyes. Remember, people move typically one way on this issue. People go from opposition to support, and it takes personal experience, it takes interpersonal relationships and contact and arguments and confrontations for people to move in that direction. So don't lose hope for your cousin. When you look at the stats, when you look at the polling, people go one way. They go from opposition to marriage equality to support for marriage equality. So don't write your cousin off just because he's stuck in this place right now. Doesn't mean he will always be there. Likelier to remain there if they never see you again and they never see other family members treating you like any other married couple, and they never have the realization or insight or epiphany that that took nothing away from them and in no way diminished their marriage. So continue to have some contact with him. And if you want to have one more argument with him, I found this to be very effective when I argued with people who were opposed to marriage equality, were planning to vote against marriage equality. I would tell them that what you really want is for this issue to go away. What you really want is for this issue not to be debated on the nightly news, not to be on the cover of every daily newspaper, not to have to talk about it with your kids. And why are you having to talk about it with your kids? Why is it on the nightly news every night? Why is it all over the daily newspaper? Because we can't get married. As soon as we get married, the issue fades. It's not debated hotly anymore, except in some tiny corners of the far, far religious right. It's just a matter of fact now. It's settled. You don't read much about marriage equality, say, in Canada, because it's over and done. There isn't a debate. There isn't a political conflict that's playing out and generating a lot of heat and light in media coverage. So you should vote yes to make this issue go away. If you vote no and you're successful, not that this plebiscite in Australia is going to decide the issue. This is just an advisory vote, just a waste of $150 million. But if you vote no, that just means we're going to continue to have this fight, because we're going to have this fight until we've secured the same right to marry that opposite sex couples enjoy. So of no vote, what that does is extends the life of this argument that's dividing our family, that's dividing our church indefinitely. Vote yes to make the argument stop. Vote yes. Give us what we want. Give us marriage equality, and it stops. The fight over marriage equality stops. And for a lot of religious conservatives, it is the fight. It is the debate. It is all the media attention that they hate. And there's only one way out of that. There's only one way to stop the fight. There's only one way to turn off the spigot and stop the gushing of stories and television programs and public debate about this issue. And that's to give us marriage equality. So support it. Support it if you want it to stop. Because if you vote no, it goes on and on and on until in the end we get what we want, which is equality under the law. Thanks to Audible for supporting our show. Audible makes traffic an escape you look forward to, because in your car you'll have access to an unbeatable selection of bestsellers, mysteries, thrillers, and motivation. Transform your commute. Ride with Audible. One audiobook you guys might like is The All or Nothing Marriage, How the Best Marriages Work by Savage Lovecast guest Eli J. Finkel, narrated by Mark Deakins. For our audience, Audible is offering a free audiobook with a 30-day free trial. If you want to listen to it, Audible has it. Just go to audible.com/savage and browse their unmatched selection of audio content. Download a title free and start listening. It's that easy. Get your free audiobook with a 30-day free trial at audible.com/savage. It's a great way to support the Savage Lovecast. Again, that's audible.com/savage.
Hi, Dan and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. I'm an early 20s straight female living on the East Coast, and I'm calling about a guy I've been seeing for a couple months who, as of yesterday, has officially started living in his car by choice. So backstory, I'd been going on a lot of mediocre first and second dates, but hadn't really been even attracted to anyone in a solid maybe 2 years. So I was and am really psyched about the chemistry I had with this guy upon meeting him. We hit it off quickly and had a lot of weird things in common, and we're immediately comfortable around each other. That also translated to the bedroom as well. He's way more giving and open than anyone else I've ever slept with, and it's exciting to be sleeping with someone I can actually explore with sexually without any hesitation. Also, side note, first guy to ever make me actually come. Many have tried, so go team. And when we started hanging out, one thing that quickly became obvious is that the differences in our financial situations was unfamiliar territory for me. I have a livable entry-level salary. I'm not broke, but not rolling in tow. But this guy works as a musician and gets paid gig to gig, and those gigs aren't always consistent. So I had to learn to be more aware about times he might not be able to go out to eat, or if he hadn't had a recent paying performance, that was all fine. Just kind of a new dynamic. But then one day, he slips into conversation that when his lease ended, he was planning on living in his car to save money and minimize his lifestyle. I tried not to overreact, and I asked him a few sensible questions about it, but then I was a little put off because, honestly, he had really good answers to all of them. He had plans for safety, for comfort, showering, internet, food, etc. And I'd done a lot of research. So I was left with just me saying, but you're living in your car. That's not what people do. We haven't defined our relationship, and I've been keeping it casual, so it's not really up to me what he does, but I can feel it getting a little bit more serious. I'm an empathetic person generally, and I care about him. So when he mentions something about his day that's related to living in his car struggles, I want to say, oh, I'll sleep here, I'll come shower. But I've been purposely not doing that for my own sanity. I don't have any reason to think that he would want to take advantage of me, but I'm still wary of slipping into any habits that make me question if he's into me or if he's into my living situation or resources. What do I do, Dan? I don't really understand why he's doing this instead of just getting a more consistent side job. I don't really know why someone else hasn't talked him out of it. But I also don't really fully understand why it bothers me so much. I feel like you're going to say dump the motherfucker already, but I haven't really been into someone like this in a long time, so I'm having a little bit of a hard time considering that option. Side note, he only started living in his car like 2 days ago, and this is already the level that I'm analyzing it, enough to call you. So let me know what you think.
So I wanted to talk to you about your boyfriend.
Yeah, are we calling him that?
What? Well, are we calling him that? I don't know. I want to talk to him about this. I want to talk to you about this guy who can make you come, who lives in a car.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Okay,
except for the car thing.
Why is that such a problem? And we get all the way to the end of the call, actually, before you note that he's only been living in the car for a couple days.
Right, I know, and I was already stressing about it.
And so he has an idea that he may be able to economize and, pursue his dream of being a musician when he's not making a lot of money right now without having to have a side gig to pay his rent or pay his utilities.
Right.
And
yeah, exactly.
That's not an irrational choice on his part.
No, and I like I said, I think I said in my call, I like understand he's really thought it through and like has the answers to all these questions. I think my main concern is kind of the imbalance that it creates in terms of like me having a place and him not having a place, and me wondering if when he's
and you feeling sort of guilted every night to invite him to stay at your place rather than sleep in his car.
Right, exactly. Or when I want to, if he's saying yes because I have a home and a bed, or if he's saying yes because he wants to stay over.
Right. And you don't want to be exploited.
Right, exactly.
And there's a long history of sort of sexy male musicians like leaning on the women in their lives to help pay the bills and keep a roof over their head and keep them fed while they pursue their dreams. And so it's not unheard of for an artist who's sexy and can make women come to freeload a little bit here and there. Right?
Right, exactly.
And you don't want to be a mark.
Right.
So you need to tell him all that. You need to tell him all that.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. And I think
you can live in a car, dude, but I don't want to be in a position of feeling like I have to invite you to stay in my house every night because I live alone, and for now I want to live alone, and I barely know you. We've only been fucking around for a couple of months. And so I'm not ready to move in. So don't think that you moving into a car 2 days ago, I hope part of your long-term plan, one of the things you thought out is that you'll be living with me soon and I'll be paying 100% of the rent and utilities because you technically live in a car even though you're in my house every night. That's not going to happen.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think I've said part of that, maybe not all of that. So I think that's definitely a good advice. Since I called, we've talked about it a little bit more.
And what does he have to say?
He was less oblivious to my concerns than I expected, to be honest. A couple of beers in one night, we kind of talked about it, and I was like, it makes me feel weird because I'm not just your friend. And he was like, I know it's stressful, like blah, blah, blah. It's just like he doesn't have money and like needs to, like, I'm not going to ask him to get a house so that I feel more comfortable. And, it's just kind of my own stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're right.
I wonder if part of it, if he does become your boyfriend, will you be embarrassed to tell your friends, my boyfriend lives in a car? My boyfriend is what some people
I will openly admit that. Yeah, exactly. That's totally part of it, and I can't deny that at all, for sure.
Okay, but this is a different kind of homelessness. This is sort of an itinerant musician artistic choice, and not mental illness, not drug addiction, not grinding poverty necessarily. Not that we shouldn't have empathy and sympathy for people who have mental illnesses, are caught in a cycle of poverty, or have drug addiction issues that have rendered them homeless. There should be services, and we should help, and we should empathize. But This is a different kind of homelessness.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be
Like,
economically
naturally.
exploited by him. And I think you need to be really
Exactly.
clear about that there's a line. And if you ever wind up living with me, you will be paying rent and utilities. You will not be technically living
Right.
in your car, because that's
like
where
easing your way in. Yeah.
right, some of your belongings are while you're in my house every night. And
Right.
I'm paying for all the hot water that you bathe in.
Right.
So if we keep seeing each other and you want to move in at a certain point, or you have moved in for all intents and purposes at a certain point, you will pay rent again.
Right. Yeah, that's a good. I think the other thing is that I would have him over more nights, but I don't live alone. I live with a couple of roommates. So like the amount of time that he spends there it's not just up to me. It's kind of, I have to be sensitive to them as well.
Can I ask what kind of car he's living in?
Oh, I don't know cars. It's not like a SUV or anything. It's like a normal car. And now he has like this hatch thing on top to store his items.
Uh-huh.
So
So it's not somewhere you
small.
could crash for the night either. It's not.
Oh, no.
It's not a big car. It's not a recreational vehicle. It's not a RV.
No, he eventually wants to like do one of those crazy intense camper vans where it's like decked out to live in forever, which I think is actually pretty cool. But that will be a long way down the road, like in terms of finances for that.
Well, you might be surprised at how quickly he could make that happen if he has no other expenses.
No rent. Yeah,
even
that's true. Yeah.
Living on a musician's salary. There was just a piece on NPR I heard last night where they're talking about older people and retirees whose 401ks were all destroyed in the economic collapse in 2008, who are living in their cars or living in RVs and finding it really freeing because they don't have rent, utilities, maintenance. They don't have the burden of, the apartment, even with rising rents, that their need for money, their need for income, they're able to support a pretty decent lifestyle after they sort of jettisoned all the expense of having a household. So he may be able to scrape together enough money pretty quickly to get the kind of, Airstream trailer or RV or tricked out van that allows you to spend some nights at his place. But
yeah, and camp somewhere. Yeah, totally.
But I can understand your hesitancy here because it's a new relationship. You're probably in the besotted stage. He's able to make you come, which is such a fucking such a fucking thing in his favor. And at that stage, you think, oh my God, my boyfriend's homeless. Oh my God. Or lives in his car and I really like him and I like these orgasms. So you're going to feel this impulse toward just wanting to take care of him. But he needs
totally.
to.
And I feel that even when people aren't living in their car. So.
Right. And he needs to demonstrate to you that he's an adult who can take care of himself. That's who you want to be in a relationship with. You want to be in a relationship with somebody who can take care of themselves, that you can then take care of at those times in their life when they may need help, and who can take care of you at the times in your life when you need help. You don't want to be with someone who's a basket case and falling apart all the time, because that's not going to be a relationship.
It's not a trade-off. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to commodify it, like we should all take care of each other.
Right.
But you need to be with somebody who's capable of taking care of themselves and capable of taking care of you when you need care taken, and vice versa.
Right.
And psychologically, I think you need to get past this idea that because he lives in his car, because he's choosing to live in his car for perfectly valid and rational reasons, that he's not dateable. I think he's perfectly dateable, so long as you have clear boundaries. Yeah,
no, I think you're definitely right. I think the telling my friends and parents that my boyfriend lives in a car is something I'm working on. And I'm ashamed to say that bothers me, but it does a little, and I think less so than it did when I first called. But
I think the reason that bothers you is because when you tell them that, they're going to make all sorts of assumptions about your boyfriend.
Exactly.
Being a loser and a user and worry for you. But you know what? They're going to worry for you in the same way that you were worried for yourself.
Yep.
So their thought processes aren't going to be any different than yours have been. You will have to discuss with them your boundaries and share with them how his choice to live in his car is a rational choice right now, and reassure them that you aren't being used because you've established these clear boundaries, and set them at ease. Their concerns and questions hopefully won't be coming from a place of malice or judgment, but from a place of ignorance and concern.
Yeah.
And you should be able to address those concerns.
Right. Yeah. I think I had the same questions that they will probably have, but I also know him. So I think it's hard to kind of just answer those questions when it's someone just seeing that on paper. But hopefully, they'll meet him eventually. But
yeah, and they'll get to know him. Or you'll break up in 2 weeks because something else will rear up and will be a deal breaker and pull the plug, and you won't have to ever worry about your parents finding out that you're dating a guy who lives in a car, who can make you come, because hopefully your parents aren't listeners to this program.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too. I don't think they are.
Well, good luck. Give us a call back in a couple months and let us know how the car boyfriend went.
Thank you. I'm so happy you called back.
Hi, Dan. This is a question about being in a relationship with an alcoholic. I'm a queer bi guy in a 6-month relationship with a queer bi woman. She formerly identified as poly, but no longer does, but still wants an open relationship. We started out as monogamous, but after a few months, opened it up to a limited extent, hooking up as a couple with other people, so threesomes, couples, hookups, etc., but never apart from each other or individually or in secret. The issue is that she's an alcoholic, seeing a substance abuse therapist and working really hard on it, but she does fall off the wagon occasionally. And when she does, she drinks really hard, goes wild. By her own admission, her filters and self-control kind of drop. When she's really drunk, she'll make statements like telling me that the one thing she can guarantee me is that at some point she's going to cheat on me and she'll hate herself for it, but it'll probably happen. Another time saying that for her, blowjobs don't have the same emotional weight and it's just something fun she can do with friends or acquaintances and it's no big deal. Or else in a drunken haze, falling asleep, she'll, for example, mumble about giving a blowjob to a friend she visited in Florida, even though at the time she insisted nothing happened. The challenge is that if I try to have an honest conversation about these statements the next day, she'll get really angry at me for taking these statements seriously and insist they're just drunken trash talk and quote her therapist to the effect that the alcoholic mind changes when under the influence, and one might say things that have no basis in reality, and I'm just being jealous and weird and controlling, and she would never do that because she loves me too much and doesn't want to lose me. So the question is, am I being a fool? Is she giving me all the signs that my gut instinct is right and that she's hooking up with the other people? The relationship is amazing otherwise when she's sober. The sex is truly transcendent and has opened me up to areas I always wanted to explore but never could with other partners. I really want to make it work, even if that means opening it up completely, but only in a 100% honest manner. But even when I suggest that, she insists she doesn't want it because she's afraid she'd lose me if we did. Any advice, much appreciated. Thanks.
In vino veritas, as they used to say in ancient Rome, in wine truth. Not always the truth, though. Sometimes people get drunk and, indeed, bullshit comes flying out of their mouths. Sometimes, though, people get drunk, tell the truth, and later, when they sober up, they deny that that was the truth. How do you know which it is? I don't know. You can't hook your occasionally off-the-wagon girlfriend to a lie detector test that's going to measure her blood alcohol level at the same time. I am concerned, though, that you've only been dating this woman for 6 months, and there's already a pattern that you've detected of her falling off the wagon, of you guys having these conversations about all the guys she's blowing. How often does this alcoholic in treatment fall the fuck off the wagon? Sounds like she's an active alcoholic if she's falling off the wagon at regular intervals in the last 6 months, and whoever's treating her isn't doing a really good job, and she's not really committed to sobriety and perhaps keeping other men's cocks out of her mouth. I think your best course of action is to embrace the worst case scenario here. The worst case scenario is she's giving blowjobs to randos and friends. And are you okay with that? If you're not okay with that, I think you should go. If you are okay with that, perhaps you should stay. If you're not okay with that being something that she does that's in violation of whatever openness agreement that you two have, maybe you should go. Because when you offer her a completely open relationship, she turns it down. And I suspect that it's probably because she doesn't want you to have the same license, sober or drunk, that she allows herself when she's drunk. That she wants you to have rules, and she wants a kind of get drunk, get out of free card because you're drunk card for herself. That's my hunch. But I don't know her. You know her. I'm not in the room with her. You're in a better position to judge, perhaps, her truthiness, not just her drunkiness.
Hi, micro listeners. This is a Magnum subscriber speaking to you about why I am a Magnum subscriber. There's a million reasons, but the best reason that I can think of is that we all love Daddy Dan. And you know how your parents tell you that they love all their children equally. We know it's bullshit, and we know that Dan loves the Magnum subscribers more. So that's why I'm a Magnum subscriber, because I want Daddy Dan's love.
And we're going to leave it there. Quick programming note. Savage Lovecast presents Dan Savage, that's me, and New York Times bestselling author Esther Perel, author of Mating in Captivity, and the new book, The State of Affairs, Rethinking infidelity. We are going to be appearing together in Seattle at the Egyptian Theater on October 12th and Friday, October 13th at the Orpheum Theater in Vancouver, British Columbia. Esther will be answering your questions. We'll be talking about her book. We'll be taking questions together. And afterwards, Esther will be signing copies of her new book. And her new book is terrific and groundbreaking and will be very helpful. It's going to save a lot of relationships, save a lot of marriages that ought to be saved. And you should read it in advance of these events. Go to www.savagelovecast.com for more info and to get tickets again October 12th at the Egyptian Theater in Seattle and October 13th at the Orpheum Theater in Vancouver, British Columbia. All right, 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you'd like to record a question or a comment for a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. Tickets are on sale for Hump, my little porn festival in Seattle and Portland, the kickoff for next year's festival. And Hump 2017 is still touring the country. Go to humpfilmfest.com for information and tickets. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Follow Erika Moen on Twitter at Erika Moen. That's Erika with a K. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth and Nancy. We'll all be back at you next week with another installment of Savage Lovecast.